We begin this new era of Smackdown with our WWE Women's Champion Mommy, Rhea Ripley. Fresh off a successful title defense at WrestleMania, nearly every member of the Judgment Day holds a title on Smackdown, with the exception of JD McDonough. Tonight, Rhea Ripley has announced she is holding an open challenge for anyone who feels lucky enough to try to pry the title from her hands. Of course, with the assertion that Mommy is always on top. With bated breath, the SmackDown After Mania crowd awaits the superstar who is brave enough to take on Rhea Ripley for the women's title. The call would be answered by an NXT call-up as Thea Hale and Chase U make their SmackDown debut to an explosive reaction from the crowd. Thea Hale, of course, being the one who was set to take on Rhea, although one may argue that Rhea is more than capable of taking on Andre Chase. And the underdog would not disappoint in her SmackDown debut, surprising the champion and even the commentary team. But ultimately, Rhea would find her rhythm, and the tide would heavily turn, and the ever-resilient Hale simply couldn't compete. A riptide from the champion would put an end to the contest and put another W in the win column for Ripley. But Thea Hale is certainly one to watch going forward. Next up was an appearance by the evil genius of the Sky, otherwise known as Io Sky. Her days in Damage Control now over, the former champion is now back in the race to the top of SmackDown's women's division. Arguably the most talented female performer on the roster and one of the best performers on the planet, period, Sky is determined to show just how many levels above she is. She would take on a woman who is far from a stranger to her in Piper Niven. Niven, of course, has recently spent time competing in the women's tag team division. Tonight, she gets the chance to compete in singles competition against a former champion. Now, these women, of course, have history going back to their days in Stardom, where the put on an instant classic. This match would have virtually no feeling-out process, as both women would immediately throw caution to the wind. The story of this match being the classic speed versus power game, and it was fairly even throughout this match. Sky would land huge with a Spanish fly from the top rope, which put her in a prime position to land her signature moonsault to put Piper Niven away on this night. Next, we would hear from our United States champion, Dirty Dominic Mysterio, after he captured the title in a triple threat match at WrestleMania. Under a thunderous rain of boos from the crowd, Mysterio would declare the Judgment Day as the undisputed greatest faction in WWE history. And that's precisely when the lid blew off of the arena, as Dominic found himself in the path of a returning Braun Strowman. Braun didn't take too kindly to Dominic's arrogance, and he took this chance to show Dom why he should be more focused on holding onto the US title. Strowman would spike Dom with a power slam, and officially state his intent to take the United States Championship from Mysterio. The champ has some very big issues to worry about. Next up, we have a tag team match that will play a pivotal part in crowning our WWE Champion at Backlash. Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens would take on Drew McIntyre and Bobby Lashley. The stakes for this match were as follows. Whichever team walked away with the win would be opponents next week, and the winner of that match would face a superstar of management's choose at Backlash. The obvious difficulty of this match being how well would these superstars coexist with their partners who could potentially be their opponents the following week. Zayn and Owens obviously have their own history as enemies, but more historically as best friends. McIntyre has become increasingly obsessed with becoming the WWE Champion over previous months. Lashley being the ever-dominant force, also being an extremely formidable obstacle for the opposition. With the competitors involved in this match, you can imagine what a great contest this was. The story very early on being the power on display from Bobby and Drew being too much for Owens and Zayn. Lashley would connect with a spear on Zayn, but didn't quite get all of it. Not quite enough to keep Sami Zayn down. Match would continue on, and the tables seemed to turn. When out of desperation, Sami Zayn hit a huge suplex on Lashley. Owens would nearly put an end to contest, nailing McIntyre with a stunner. But while the ref's back was turned, Owens would take his eye off the ball as AJ Styles would attack Zayn at ringside. A Claymore out of nowhere would put an end to the contest, setting up McIntyre versus Lashley next week on Smackdown. Mid-celebration, Lashley himself would be on the receiving end of a Claymore. Drew leaving a stinging reminder of what the goal is for both men next week. Styles would then enter the ring and dispose of a discombobulated Lashley. And it would seem like McIntyre and Styles have formed some sort of alliance. After that contest, we would see an appearance from main event Jey Uso, looking to address the live audience. With this being a pivotal time of change in not only SmackDown history, but WWE history as a whole, Jey Uso wants to carve out his future as one of the faces of the brand. Jey would explain that he's nearly done it all in his career. He's seen the highs and lows, and the only thing he's missing is being the guy. And to him, that means becoming the WWE champion, saying it's the only missing piece to his career. And he can't be fully satisfied until he's the number one. And if you ask for an opportunity, you shall receive. Newly elected SmackDown General Manager Molly Holly would take exception to Jey's comments, telling him that she completely understands the feeling of being overlooked and falling short from glory. She would tell Jey that SmackDown is once again the land of opportunity. Every single opportunity will be earned. The era of part-time champions is over as far as SmackDown goes. She would give Jey the opportunity to face the winner of McIntyre and Lashley in Backlash, as next week he would take on LA Knight for that spot. Up next, big-time championship match, as the Women's Tag Team Championships were on the line. Zoe Stark, coming off one of the most impressive main roster rookie years in recent memory, captured the tag titles with her tag partner, WWE Hall of Famer Trish Stratus. Trish having a career resurgence, arguably doing some of the best work of her career currently. She's played the mentor role for Zoe Stark. Whether that's for better or for worse is to be decided. Their opponents on this night would be the uber-athletic duo of Kaden Carter and Katana Chance. SmackDown GM Molly Holly would state before this contest that a much bigger emphasis of effort would be put into the Women's Tag Team Championships, making them one of the premier championships on the SmackDown brand. This night was truly the start of a new revolutionary era of Friday Night SmackDown. Under new management and new philosophy, anything is possible on the Blue brand. And this match from the start was a showcase of not only the emerging stars Chance and Carter, but a great display from the rising stars Zoe Stark. Carter and Chance would show absolutely no hesitation in taking the fight to a Hall of Famer either, hitting Stratus with big-time offense and showing the crowd what the future of the brand looks like. Trish would show the young duo that she isn't too rusty to keep up as she connects with her own offense. This including a chick kick that ultimately secured the win for Stark and Stratus as they retain the women's tag team titles. The sky seems to be the limit for this team, as Stark continues to show her levels and Stratus unveils new layers to her game every single week. Following this match, Finn Balor of the Judgment Day would approach AJ Styles backstage and formally offer him an invitation to join the faction. Styles would politely decline to Balor's dismay. And in our main event, Finn Balor with Damian Priest by his side would prepare to take on one of the opponents who participated in the United States Championship Triple Threat at WrestleMania, which resulted in Dirty Dominic Mysterio walking away with the gold. The Judgment Day have a bit of a stronghold on the SmackDown brand, as the only championship that aren't in their grasps are the vacant WWE Championship and the Women's Tag titles. But now, they're stepping on the toes of one of the greatest of all time in the Viper, Randy Orton. Yes, Our main event on this night was Finn Balor versus Randy Orton. The Smackdown after Mania is only the start of this new chapter. Smackdown was lucky enough to get a steal in the draft with Orton, and the audience is more than excited to see what the next chapter looks like for this legend. Early on, Orton's signature methodical approach seemed to be a bit of a hindrance against the rapid attack of Balor. Things wouldn't stay that way for long, though, as Orton began to figure the Grand Slam champion out and deliver big-time punishment. Orton connected with his signature spike DDT, and it seemed like the end was just beginning. Finn would power out of the RKO, but find himself on the receiving end of an exploder suplex. Just when it looked like Balor had found an open door, Orton immediately shut it with an RKO out of nowhere and secured the victory. And when an enraged Damian Priest would try to avenge his faction mate, he would also find himself in RKO country. The first night of this new season of Smackdown didn't disappoint, and it only gets better from here. Next week, Lashley takes on McIntyre, and Jey Uso takes on LA Knight. Yeah. To close the show, we get a shot at Bayley speaking to Zoe Stark backstage, seemingly wanting to create a new and better version of Damage Control in her own words. She sees the potential in Stark and thinks they can rise to the top together. Stark, of course, a tag team champion with Trish Stratus. Will she be receptive to Bayley's words?